School. Today, my name is Viola Reninda. I am a researcher at PSHK and will moderate this international lecture and public discussion. Thank you all for participating in our agenda today. We have in-person participants here and also people joining us online on Zoom. Welcome to our discussion. Uh, for the opening remarks, I would like to invite our Executive Director of PSHK, Rizky Argama, to share us the opening remarks. Please, Mr. Agama, you can come to the podium.
Thank you, Vio. Selamat siang, Bapak Ibu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our humble campus, Jentra School of Law, and home of the Indonesian Center for Law and Policy Studies, or PSHK. It is very nice to see all of you here today. Let me begin by welcoming our main speaker today, Dr. Sung Hoon Hong from the Korea Institute of Public Administration, or KIPA. Thank you for joining us and for bringing an international perspective to today's lecture and discussion. I would also to welcome our discussants today, Pak Hemiwan Fatoni from Jentra Law School, Pak Yudhistira Nugraha from Ministry of Kemendikdasmen, Kemendikdasmen, Primary and Secondary Education Ministry, and also Mbak Deborah Iren Christine from TIFA Foundation. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making the time to be here. And also our colleague, our moderator, Viola Reninda. So today's event is part of Jentra Law School's 15th Dies Natalis and also the 28th anniversary of PSHK. I think this is a good way to mark both occasions. We are taking some time to discuss an issue that is quite new for many of us, at least for me, but is already affecting our government, public services, and everyday life. I should admit from the beginning that I'm not an expert in AI or digital technology, so I will not pretend to have all the answers. I'm also here to listen and learn from our speakers today and from all of you. But for us in PSHK, the topic still feel close to our work. For many years, we have worked on regulatory reform, lawmaking processes, public participation, and the relationship between citizens and public institutions. And more recently, we have also been involved in discussions in digital democracy, digital rights, and the impact of technology on civic space. So when we talk about AI in public services, I tend to look at it through questions that are more familiar to us. How should it be regulated? How is responsible when something goes wrong? And how can the public understand or question decisions made with the help of AI system? AI may help governments work faster and improve public services. At the same time, we are still learning about the risk and the limitation. I certainly do not have the answers, and I suspect many institutions are also still trying to understand this problem as well. And this is why this conversation are very useful. Today, we will hear different perspective on how AI is being used in the public sector, both in Indonesia and also across the Asia Pacific region. We will also discuss the possible benefits, the risks, and the safeguards that may be needed. Please feel free to ask questions, share examples from your own work. I see so many experts in this room, and, or even express concerns that may still be unresolved. We are here to learn from our speakers and also from one another, that we can listen to his lecture. Once again, welcome to Jentra and PSHK. I hope we have an interesting and enjoyable discussion. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Back to you, Vio.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mr. Gama, for opening the discussion. Now I would like to invite all the speaker and also the discussants to come forward to sit besides me. We first of all we have Dr. Seng Hun Hong. He is a policy expert in regulatory reform and AI governance and currently a visiting fellow at Macquarie University Law School. Please come forward, Dr. Seng. And then we also have Dr. Yudhistira Nugraha. He is the head of Center for Data and Information and Technology at Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. Yeah, please come forward. I also invite Ms. Deborah Irene Christine, Manager for Data Policy and Digital Governance at TIFA Foundation. Would you please come forward? And then lastly, we also have Mr. Hemiwan Patoni, visiting fellow at Gentera Law School for Technology and Law. Please come forward. Okay, first of all, we are going to open the discussion with the lecture session from Dr. Seng, approximately 25 to 30 minutes, and then we will continue with the responses from the discussants, and lastly, we will close it with sharing sessions with all the participants in here, and also the Q&A session with the participant. We also provide sign language interpreter online, as you can see, for those who needs it. Okay, I will give the floor to Mr. Sangpun for the presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Selamat siang. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me in this beautiful campus of Gentera School of Law. And unfortunately, I don't have exact answers to the questions that Whiskey raised in his remark. And I believe this is the place that we can actually think about it together, right? And find a way of, how we promote it. And so the title of today's talk is a little bit provocative, when no one can say sorry. I hope that by the end of this presentation, you understand exactly what I mean by it. And more importantly, I hope we can think about it together. I want to say at the very start that I'm not here to give you the answer, as I told you. I'm here to share a problem I've been wrestling with and to learn from you. But because one of the 4 countries in this research is Indonesia, and the people in this room understand the country far better than I will ever. So, hey, oops. Briefly, very briefly about me, so you know where I'm coming from. So I'm a fellow at the Korea Institute of Public Administration, where I led our Department of Regulatory Policy, and my work sits at the crossroad where regulatory governance meets artificial intelligence. I did my PhD at the Australian National University, and I've spent years advising governments on how to regulate well. The reason I'm here today is a fellowship from the APNIC Foundation, which supports research on digital development across the Asia Pacific. Under that fellowship, I'm studying what should the governments in the Asia Pacific do to effectively govern public sector AI. So this talk is still work in progress, and I'll be honest, I'm hoping some of you might become part of that. Okay. Let me start with something important. I'm not an AI pessimist. The promise of public sector AI is real, and it's already changing lives. Look at my own country, South Korea. And the Korea Electric Power Corporation built a system that reads patterns in electricity, telecom, and water use to find people living alone who may be in danger. So when someone's usage suddenly drops and phone goes silent, it alerts a social worker. It runs in 88 local governments, covers about 13,000 people, and so far it has saved 15 lives. People who might have died, unnoticed. In Singapore, a text chatbot answers citizens' question instantly, day or night, saving people thousands of hours. And in Australia, a tax office pre-fills your return and gently warns you before you make a mistake. These are things that were simply impossible to do at scale with human hands alone. And it's not only about saving or serving citizens, it's also about cleaner, fairer government. In France, for example, AI reads area photographs to find undeclared swimming pools and buildings. The taxes are fair. And importantly, a human official checks every single flag before anything happens. In Ukraine, an AI-powered procurement system has made public spending transparent and saved hundreds of millions of euros by curbing corruption. And here in our own region, Korea and Indonesia already run real-time systems to watch for fiscal risks. So let me be clear. The promise is real, and it is already delivering. But here's the thing. Every one of these systems makes decisions about people. So I want to ask a simple question. One will keep coming back to one wrong. And who says sorry? That's because the same power that helps people can also inflict harm. Let me show you what could happen when there is no human at the wheel. In Australia, there was a government scheme people now call robo-debt. Many of you here might may have heard of it. The core failure lay in a crude mathematical mismatch. In Australia, welfare benefits are calculated precisely based on a recipient's fortnightly income. However, the government introduced an automated algorithm that took annual income data from the tax office and simply divided by 26 to get a bi-weekly average. This algorithm completely ignored the reality of vulnerable populations, like casual or seasonal workers, whose incomes fluctuate widely throughout the year. Because of this mismatched logic, the system flagged that hundreds of thousands of legitimate recipients as fraudsters, automatically issuing over 400,000 false debt notices. Whereas still, the government reversed the burden of proof, forcing marginalized individuals to somehow find years-old payslips to prove their innocence against an OPEC system. But even when the Administrative Appeals Tribunal ruled these debts unlawful, the government exploited systemic loopholes to keep those rulings private. So by quietly settling cases one by one without appealing them to a higher court, they prevented the public precedent from forming. So this isolated the victims, paralyzed collective legal actions, and kept the media in the dark for years. In the American state of Michigan, a system called Midas automatically accused people of unemployment fraud. It was wrong 85% of the time, and yet it garnished wages, seized tax refunds, pushed families into bankruptcy, all before a single human being looked at the case. So notice what both systems did. They flipped the burden of proof onto the citizens. You proved the machine wrong. Now a different kind of failure, not error, but discrimination. In the Netherlands, the tax authority used a risk scoring algorithm on childcare benefits. Quietly, it treated having a second nationality as a signal of likely fraud. So tens of thousands of immigrant families were falsely accused, ordered to repay years of benefits. Some lost their homes, some lost custody of their children. The scandal was so severe that in 2021, the entire Dutch government resigned. In the UK, the Home Office secretly graded visa applicants by nationality. People from certain countries were funneled into a red high-risk lane, and there's the trap. The more people from a country were refused, the higher that country's risk score climbed. A self-fulfilling loop. So it was scrapped only after the first successful court challenge to an algorithm in British history. In both cases, people were judged not by what they did, but by who they were. Now, you might be thinking these are faraway countries, faraway problems. So let me bring it closer. Here in Indonesia, please correct me if I'm wrong. The government is rolling out an AI-assisted social aid system that uses facial recognition to verify beneficiaries worth around 15 billion US dollars. That is one of the largest deployments of its kind anywhere in the world. And we already know that gaps in the digital ID system, the national ID card, national identification number, can leave undocumented and indigenous communities out of basic services. So early in the pandemic, some people faced barriers to vaccination because they were not registered in the national ID system, although the government later allowed vaccination without a national identification number. So here's my honest question to you, and I'll ask you to hold on to it. Could a robo debt happen here? One thing I've always found striking about governments in South Korea is how little attention they pay to warnings about things that haven't happened yet. A risk on the horizon rarely moves bureaucrats. That's my personal experience. But the moment something goes wrong, officials spring into action, racing to build a response. The problem is that a response built in the aftermath is retrospective, not precautionary, and measures forged in the heat of a scandal tend to be very excessive, even punitive, not to mention a huge number of victims affected by the policy failure. So for countries, for very different systems, but one pattern. None of these was just a software bug. They share a deeper structure, and that structure is what I want to talk about next, because it's what makes public sector AI a distinct kind of risk. Here is the difference that changes everything. I call it no exit. Think about private AI. If your bank application treats you unfairly, you can switch bank, right? If ChatGPT annoys you or you find you're not satisfied with its performance or its pricing policy, then you can use Gemini or Claude instead. You can just all walk away, right? But public sector AI, there is no other welfare service. There's no other tax authority, no other immigration service. You cannot opt out, or it is too costly to do so. You cannot migrate to another country just because you received a death notice, right? The victims of RoboDebt couldn't simply cancel the welfare agency the way you'd cancel a subscription. So in this circumstance, you are a captive user, and that captivity, the inability to walk away, is what makes this risk fundamentally different from anything in the private sector. To understand why this matters so deeply, I want to borrow an idea from neo-republicanism, like those propelled by Professor Philip Pettit of Princeton University. They call freedom as non-domination. This is primarily a Western tradition from Cicero in the Roman Republic to Machiavelli, English commonwealth men, and American founding fathers, that it has universally applicable beyond the Western civilization. In the neo-republican tradition, you are unfree, not only when someone actually interferes with you, but when you live at the mercy of a power you cannot check. Here's the classic image philosophers use. Imagine a person living under a master who is kind, who never once raised a hand against you. Are they free? Are we free? Republicans say no, because their whole life still rests in the master's goodwill. The day the master changes his mood, everything changes. So their standing depends entirely on someone else's discretion. So freedom is not just being left alone, it's being subject to arbitrary power. Power that can decide your fate without giving reasons and without any way for you to push back. The domination is not being harmed, it's living at the mercy of a power you cannot question. Now, why does it matter here and why now? First, non-domination depends on a strong rule of law. To be free from arbitrary power, power has to be bound by rules that apply equally to everyone. And citizens must be able to contest the decisions. That is the very heart of a Negara Hun, a state governed by law. It is, I think, deeply in the spirit of the fifth principle of Pancasila, social justice for all Indonesian. Second, this is the turn today. Arbitrary power wears a new face. It is no longer only kings or masters. When an OPEC automated system decides who receives welfare, who gets a visa, who qualifies for a benefit, with no explanation and no way to contest it, then the citizen is dominated by the algorithm. And to be precise, by those people behind it, even if no official ever intended any harm. And that is a thread running through this entire talk. Non-domination is not some dusty idea about kings. It is the question the algorithmic state puts us right now. And its answer begins with a single word we return to: contestability. So, how does domination actually creep in? From my research, I see four channels, four different ways the state power reaches you and you can't push back. And each one has already happened somewhere. First, data exclusion. If you're not in the data or your record is wrong, the system acts as if you don't exist. Look at India's Aadhaar. To collect their monthly food subsidy, people had to pass up a fingerprint scan. But the one fingerprint of the elderly or manual laborers often wouldn't read. No scan, no food. One state canceled millions of ration cards to purge so-called ghosts, but a study found 88% actually belong to real, eligible families. Second, algorithmic stigmatization. The system treats where you're from or who you are as a warning sign. That's the Netherlands and the UK, we just saw. Nationality used as a fraud signal. Next case is algorithmic subordination. The computer decides from start to finish, and suddenly it's on you to prove it wrong. With no human to hear you out. That's Robodebt and Midas. Disprove the machine. How can a vulnerable person can do that? Fourth, accessibility exclusion. If you can't get online or the form assumes skills you don't have, you're simply shut out. In the UK, universal credit went digital by default, but about 1 in 5 adults lack the digital skills. The elderly, the disabled, those who don't speak the language, some were never told they could apply any other way. They gave up and never claimed what they were owed. So please keep these four in mind, because in a moment I want to ask how they might look here in the Asia Pacific countries. Now I want to go one level deeper because this is really where administrative lawyers' eye matters. Three things make this worse, and they turn a list of technical problems into a genuine question about power. So it's not a tech problem, it's a power problem. One, benevolent domination. Almost every one of these systems was built with good intention, right? Efficiency, reaching more people, delivering better. But good intentions don't cancel domination. If citizens can't understand or contest how the system decides, then this is exactly Republicans' kind of master. In fact, the good intentions are what make the domination so easy to miss. Two, the chilling effect. Once people learn that they can be flagged and they can't fight back, they begin to self-censor, quietly adjusting their lives to keep the system happy. The system doesn't even have to act, right? The mere possibility disciplines behavior. Citizens surrender their freedom before anything happens. Three, domination is outsourced. These algorithms are normally built by private tech firms and technical experts. And so very often, even the officials themselves cannot explain a decision. That's the case in South Korea. Most AI systems are developed outsourced, right? That's by law. That's why people say procurement system is so important. Anyway, power over citizens quietly shift to actors under no democratic control. That is why meaningful human oversight disappears in the first place. So the real question is not, is the code accurate? The real question is who holds arbitrary power over the citizen? And can the citizen contest it? So what do we do? And here I want to be careful because there's a tempting shortcut, just copy the European or American frameworks. Now the EU Act, OECD AI principles, these are valuable documents. The problem is not their content. The problem is rather this. A rule only bites if the institutions around it actually work, right? A court you can genuinely reach, a regulator with real bite, a complete population registry, reliable internet. Lifting a template out of that sort and dropping it somewhere else, and what you get is guardrails on paper, not real guardrails. It's more dangerous, right? Rules that look strong but do nothing. And across much of the Asia Pacific, those institutional foundations are still being built, while automated systems are already arriving. So even a universal tool has to be re-grounded in local law, local capacity, and local risk. But here's the promising part. If it is done right, there's not a disadvantage. The region can leapfrog the West blind spots instead of inheriting them. And this is my whole point, it can only be designed from the inside. So let me put 4 principles on the table as a starting point for us to test answers, not as a conclusion. First principle is contestability, the right to push back. Every automated system must be open to a real appeal. And crucially, the burden must flip. So once you object, the government must justify its decision, not you disprove it. A decision you cannot contest is not a public service, it's an arbitrary command. Second, explainability. The right to reason you can actually understand, not a data dump, not 1,000 pages of code that only overwhelms you, but a real explanation of how the decision applied to you. Third, accountability. Someone who answers, right? An agency cannot outsource its responsibility to a vendor or a line of code. A named human capacity, human authority owns the outcome. And ideally, an independent watchdog keeps them honest rather than letting them police themselves. So this is the who says sorry and who guards the guardian. Last but not least, inclusive design. Build it from the ground up for the people most likely to fall through, the undocumented, the elderly, the disconnected. Inclusion has to be the foundation, not a patch added later. So now, how do I actually build these principles in? One concrete tool is an AI impact assessment. So you check a system against these principles before it ever touches a citizen. Valuable, but I want to argue that it's incomplete. Because look at how it's done today. The EU, in the EU AI Act, there's a fundamental rights assessment, and there's a Korea's new law, the one called the Public AI Act. But both assess the system's impact before deployment. And then once the system goes live, no one is required to look again. The EU one asks the service deployer to update if there's any change in the AI system, but to me, this is inadequate. Think back to Robot and Midas. The damage didn't happen at the front door. It built up while the system was running, right? Month after month. The danger is not only at the gate, it's in operation. So an assessment cannot be a one-time gate. You pass through once. It has to run ex ante before and ex post after. And this is exactly what I'm designing actually next in a project starting next year, and where I will genuinely need input from people like you. So it should be ex ante before launch, checking the data, the logic, and whether it even fits your local low end capacity. Ex post after launch, because the real risk only surface in use. The data drift, new situations appear, small errors accumulate. So you reassess on a regular schedule whenever there's an incident, whenever there's a major challenge, and I would argue whenever there are citizen petitions for it. And running through all of it, a human in every loop. In one of my papers, I call this a triple loop. A human in the data, a human in the model, a human in operation. And this third loop, the human watching the system to live operation, is exactly the ex post check that the front door model misses. But this should not be all. It's just one instrument among many possible guardrails. And it has to be grounded here in your reality, which is exactly what I'm hoping to learn from you. Okay, so let me stop talking and turn this into a conversation. So I'd love to learn from you, especially on these three fronts. And please, there are no wrong answers here. So I'm the one learning. First, what risks is Indonesia facing right now? We could start from the things that we mentioned: the AI in the social aid program, the facial recognition, national identification card. Second, what do those four ways of domination show up here? Data exclusion, stigmatization, subordination, accessibility exclusion. Do they look the same in Indonesia or different? Is there anything I'm missing? Third, what does it actually take to build the guardrails here? Is an AI impact assessment even feasible in the Indonesian context? Could it go beyond just front door only model? And who should watch the system? Is something like an independent AI ombudsman realistic here? So I want to close now with an answer, but with an invitation. So everything I've shared today is a work in progress, and it can only get better with your help. So if any of this resonate with you, if you study this, work on this, or simply have a case you think I should know about, I'd be honored to continue the conversations. But through interview and even through email, whatever way works. So your cases, your perspective, what will make this study and framework actually fit this context instead of being one more template imported from somewhere else. So thank you for your time, thank you for your attention and your patience with my English. Terima kasih banyak. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sang. You may sit in front. It is a really remarkable presentation. Thank you so much. The time is manageable as well. And in Dr. Sang's lectures, we learn a really comprehensive explanation on the life and the utilization of AI system. We started with the promises, which at some point is delivered by the usage of AI system. For instance, like in the Ukraine, it is used to identify and also avoid corruption in the procurement. However, we also cannot reject the practices and the idea that at some point it is the domination of power and the use of AI also serve us with some inflicting harms and incidents towards the citizens used. And what interests me is when Dr. Sung stated that there is no exit in the use of AI in public sector because it is imposed to the citizens without certain options to opt out in the utilizations. And lastly, Dr. Sungs also asked questions for us to reflect on how the AI is used in our everyday life and also when facing the state and also the one who holds powers, what are the risks and how the domination is showed and what are the safeguards that we can and we have to establish in order to protect the human rights and um, uh, to protect the utilization of AI itself. I hope that these questions can also be responded by the panelists in here. Firstly, I would like to go to Mr. Iwan first. Pak Iwan, visiting fellow at Jentera Law School for the Technology and Law. Probably you may share about your experience and also practices in Indonesia. How does the AI governance is shaped right now in our nation? Please, Mr. Iwan.
Thank you, Viola. Thank you, Dr. Song, for the presentation. I think I would like to uh, use your statement that the response is usually the aftermath as the stepping stone for my comments. I think that's happened in not necessarily in AI, but most technological innovation in the public sector, that we assume that we built a nice Mercedes-Benz, while at the reality we find a crap car. But that's what happened. And when it comes to AI, due to the, for example, the agentic nature, the ability to learn and to improve, the impact can be multiplied. So I think it's happened in many sectors, and I think you highlighted a good point on the biometric identification. But I would like to probably use an example that close to many of us because in the last couple of years, I think we saw some sort of um, pressure to the activists, mainly due to their online presence, their criticism to the government, for example. So probably, I don't know. I think probably you should bring up the chilling effect as one of the domination creep in. So probably it will be 5 ways of domination creep in, especially in countries with the tendency toward an authoritarian state. Because the issue is when the citizen feel being surveilled by the government, not necessarily by any action, they will be take a strategic silence. They tend to withdraw. And in the case of many countries, including Indonesia, it can be carried over as pork barrel practices during the election. To give the context, the number, according to the latest statistics, the official numbers of the poor and the vulnerable groups and aspiring middle class, which is easy to fall as a categorized as a poor people, are 58% for the whole population. 58% is an enough number to win any contestation without being disputed. So you can imagine if 58% feel being intimidated by the state surveillance, because state has all the mean by collecting all of the data, being excluded from the bansos, being excluded from the opportunity to enter, to bring their children to the state schools, they will basically take the silence position. So I think probably for countries with several characteristics, we need to make it as 5 way of the state to creep in. That's one my first comment. The second thing, I'm a proponent of probably we need to establish some sort of a balanced approach in the governance mechanism itself. If we borrow the classical theory on responsive regulations, it categorized basically into 3 different layers, whereby at the top, the pyramid, we call it the red line, the apex. I think that's the decision, at least based on your presentation, 2 things that we can propose. First is the redlining of any automatic decision making, ADM that involve public sector, that public interest, just to avoid this robo-debt situation. And secondly, the firewalling or a strong separation between citizen data with whatever government decision that will be made. Bansos, social support, or that eligibility to get some support from the state. I think it need to be strongly separated by law, because otherwise there will be, tendency to abuse that. So we need to somehow to, I think, we need to put a red line where and when we will not allow ADM to enter our life. But on the other hand, I think we need to also to give room for innovation. Otherwise, we will be stick, in the old Stone Age. That's when the responsive regulation theory said that in the bottom part, just make a soft regulation. Basically, put the guidance, those practices from OECD, etc. We can adopt it in our context, and that's it need to be in place, especially in the public sector, because we have to admit, not only in the public sector, even the private sector, they do not have any guidance. Whenever I collect the data, what shall I do? I have just conversation with Wak Aswin before entering here, that the fact that in Indonesia you can simply query the name of the person and find out where he or she takes schools and all the private data, it is simply not acceptable actually from the data privacy perspective. But on the other hand, and we are talking about our identity number, actually the Ministry of Home Affairs implement a quite interesting and I think a correct way to check the validity of the citizen. We can't just ask, okay, Iwan, this is the birth date. Is it correct or not? The system simply say yes and no. The system will not reveal the whole data. That's I think the practice is on the data privacy from all over the world. That's I think the thing that we need to do, and always the challenge is somewhere in the middle because it can be fall suddenly as a soft spot rather than the uh, the hard spot. And I think your suggestion for the impact assessment is somewhere in the middle yet. But again, for some countries and probably Indonesia in this case, we need to put the red line for certain things that we don't want basically AI to interfere. I think that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Iwan. Before we continue to the next speaker, I would like to request the panelists to move a little bit over the left so we can have Dr. Sang.
Everybody, yeah.
We can allow Dr. Sang to put his laptop on the table. Thank you. Sorry for the inconvenience. I'm going to move the television as well. Okay, thank you. Next, we are going to hear some practices of the real use of AI in public sectors from Mr. Yudhistira Nugraha. He is, as I mentioned before, the head of Center for Data and Information Technology at Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. And Mr. Yudhistira was also the director of Jakarta Smart City, one of the leading exemplification of the use of technology in administration and city in citizens' life. Please, Mr.
Okay.
Yudhistira.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Viola, and also thank you, Dr. Hong, for your very insightful presentation. I totally agree that one of the key points that you mentioned about the what different between the public sector AI and also private sector AI. Of course, is completely different because, well, I think before I make a comments, so there's one simple question: what difference between AI and teachers? Anyone want to answer? So both AI and teacher can answer, but teacher can inspire, and also teacher can say sorry. Yeah. Well, talking about the public sector AI, of course, like but Viola mentioned that the citizen cannot simply opt out of the government services. Therefore, because of that, so as a government, we have to make sure that the implementation of AI should be fair, transparent, and so forth and so forth. So there is a big things that we are facing today, and I think from my experience working with the Jakarta Smart City and also the North City government, and also now it's like Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. So we we have many experience when we decided to use the AI. So, but from my experience, AI is not talking about the technology, as you mentioned that. So AI is about the journey. So we have make this those journey into the stages. One, sensing. The second one is understanding, and the third one is acting. So what they are, the three stages what we are facing. And you mentioned about the bansos. Well, we also have use cases that when I was in Jakarta Smart City, when you use AI to deliver social aid to citizen. So start from the sensing. I think one of the important thing that the government must learn to listen before AI learn. So this is something that sensing means that, um, of course, as a government, we receive many amounts of data information every day. So we have bunch of the data. We collected many data. Sometimes we didn't know what the purpose of the collecting of data itself. Um, so, for example, we have the citizen complaint when talking about smart city. We have the education record when talking about the Ministry of Education. We also have the school report, operational data, CCTV data, also about the social media. I'm working for the PR, so we can see what happening today in terms of the sentiment analysis or any other things. But the main problem right now is not about the lack of the data. So the main problem is data is now fragmented. What happened when you use the AI for delivering social aid? So in some cases, if the data is not complete, probably one person is excluded. They didn't receive any social assistance from the government because those person is listed on the decile 1 or even decile 10, for example. So this is very complicated because the data is fragmented. Every government institution, they have their own program, they are not integrated. So during my time at Jakarta Smart City, I think one the key lesson is the most challenging is the integrating data across the government, across the city department. It's very complicated. They have the data, but the data cannot be integrated because the data actually is 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 a PDF format, or even they don't have like CSV format, for example. So it's very difficult to integrate it data across the region, for example. So so therefore we cannot see all the big picture what happening because the data is scattered. So that's why the data is a foundation, because we see that AI is nothing without the data. Yeah, no reliable data, no reliable AI. So you mentioned about the this is some risk because
Garbage in, garbage out.
so but is data alone is not enough. So therefore you mentioned about the algorithm. So when talking about AI, there's three elements of AI: data, algorithm, and also cloud computing. Um, the first data, even not only about the big data, um, data must be accurate and trusted, interpretable, protected. So therefore, like when we talk about the bank source, you mentioned about the now the government able to select or to justify whether or not you are eligible to get the social aid from the government based on our system. But the second thing, now we're talking about the algorithm. Thanks to the large language model, thanks to the generative AI, now even AI now is more useful. But when I was like undergrad programs, I learned AI. It's Veronica or any other things. But now why AI is so growing fast, because we have many data on it. So algorithm now is can transform the raw data into predictive model. So the raw data can be like descriptive analytics. So what happening today, why this happened, what's going to happen, and what kind of action need to be taken, something like that. And also about the cloud computing. I think most AI, I think um, this is our challenging as well when you talk about the you mentioned about Bansos or any other best practices from other countries. You mentioned that the AI implementation important about the sensing. But second one is about the second one about the understanding. What the understanding? So AI, because the AI is just a tool. Yeah, AI should strengthen human judgment, not replace it. something what in education. AI is a tool, not replace the teachers, because we see the teacher as the human the loop. We see also the teacher as the core of the system, core of the system. So understanding means that, so you mentioned about many use cases that you provide on your slide. So first, the implementation of AI from my experience is one is problem solving agents. I think many use cases that already like problem solving agent, like say for example, how do you classify document, and routing citizen complaint, handling citizen complaint, and also summarizing the report and many other things that we already doing kind of things. And also, but in this purpose is more about the efficiency. And the second one is the knowledge-based agent. As a government, we have many of resources, many of regulation, policy standard, and also how do we gather together, gather all the knowledge into knowledge agent. Let's say, for example, um, like you mentioned about the chatbot or everything, like they asking about taxes or any other. So this is something that the knowledge based agents, in term of in other case for the health, so we have like telemedicine or something like that. So the third one is the third one is a learning based agent. You mentioned that, um, how do we how do we make the AI solution can more intuitive according to the user journey, according to the citizen centric. So the purpose is like whether or not AI can give a positive impact to our citizen. So learning based agent currently what we call it, we learn from the data, and so what happening, um, let's say for example, in terms of the education, so we can see about the emerging learning gap. We can see what Iwan mentioned about the some uh, disparities or social aid, something like that. We can see based on the data itself. So we can also identify the pattern. We can also detect the anomalies, for example, and we can also provide the early warning system based on the data that we have. This is something that why how the ChatGPT or Gemini also work in their system. So, and the third one is about the acting. This is most important part. When have sensing, understanding, and acting, how the intelligence, how the data can also push the government to make a decision making based on the data. So, so this is not about the technology; it's about the journey. So I believe that the risk you mentioned about the risk, we have to identify the sensing part, the accuracy, how the data being collected, and also the third one is understanding what about the algorithm behind the scene, behind the system. We have to, and then what purpose the AI can be used in what term. So we need to regular checking as well, because otherwise the answer can be biased. Because when you try, when you use like many large language model, every prompt have different answer, right? So this is something that AI more agility, more adaptability, but they don't have very concrete answer. So therefore, probably they can say sorry for that situation. I think that's it for time being. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yudhistira. So, from the two discussions, we already hear about the challenges and how to balance the use of AI and at some point still protecting the human rights. Next, we will go to Ms. Deborah Iran Christine. She is Manager for Data Policy and Digital Governance at TIFA Foundation. And recently, TIFA has published a safeguarding for the utilization of AI as well. Perhaps Ms. Deborah can share about the safeguarding as well and response other things that you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mafiola, and thank you, Dr. Song, as well as the other panelists. My name is Deborah. I'm from TIFA Foundation, which is a civil society organization based in Indonesia, and I lead the Data Policy and Governance Program. So I will take the pathway that is taken by Dr. Song, which is I'm not going to prescribe any more templates of how safeguards of AI in the public sector should be designed. But I will place myself as a concerned citizen, actually, that is trying to navigate my curiosity as well as my interest in understanding how captured is our daily life, how captured is our public governance by digital technology. And that is the viewpoint that I'm going to use in providing responses to Dr. Song's presentation. So if I can share, so as Mbak Viola mentioned, so TIFA earlier this year, we produced these baseline study, actually, scoping exercises to understand like what kind of AI systems are currently being deployed in the public sector in Indonesia. And we were helped by researchers from LAIB, from Purple Coat, as well as from other institutions, as well as from other civil society organizations in Indonesia. And to share that it was very difficult to actually conduct that scoping review because of the limited data that is available publicly. And up until now, we still do not have a public registry that register the AI systems that are currently being deployed or being planned to be deployed in Indonesia. So it was very challenging, especially when you found news articles, you have to verify that as well. So these processes actually was quite excruciating, but we managed to actually identify some AI systems that are used in the public sector. But for the specific panel, I did another exercise again last night just for this to map out specifically automated decision making systems in the public sector in Indonesia. Just this is not an exhaustive list. I was just interested in exercising how what if we do an impact assessment of the current automated decision making systems currently being deployed. What would it tell us? If we already manage to group them into risks based on the draft presidential decree of AI in Indonesia, then where to go next? So just that exercise. If we can go next again, again. Yeah, this one. So I identified about like 5 ADM, automated decision making systems in Indonesia, and what kind of decisions they are currently actually making, and documented impacts as well as potential risk from this automated decision making. And then I looked at our draft presidential bill to see where they are grouped within the AI risk levels. So across all of these, I'm not going to go one by one, but we can see that there's an electronic, what do you call it, tilang? What is tilang in English? Yeah.
Traffic fine.
Oh, traffic violation, electronic traffic violation system in Indonesia. Our colleagues in Engage Media has actually documented a lot of repeated false positives of these case. They use CCTV cameras to actually detect alleged violations of traffics in Indonesia. And I looking at the draft Perpres, the presidential decree draft, I still do not know where to group these because first of all, they do not process specific data, personal data, but they have significant impacts on the sanctions that are the legal sanctions that are going to be provided by those who are alleged to violate, right? So where do you group them? Is it high? Is it medium? And then after that, what would be the next steps after categorizing these AI systems? The second one would be Kartu Prakerja, which is an automatic system that is for how to say for incentivizing those who enroll in the Kartu Prakerja system. So and then after that, we also have the system that is used in the Mahkamah Agung, so case early detection systems. So that one also does not process personal data, but again, it has a significant impact on the judicial process. If we can go next, the previous slide then, and then the previous again. Yeah. So these ones are one of the systems here are were mentioned by Dr. Song. So biometric based digital identity system, which actually helps the operators to authenticate and activate the digital system, and then based on that authentication or activation, specific access to public services will be provided to the citizens. But then, because the system used data from EID that was in 2011 and 2012, there was a risk that older people may not be recognized again by the system, and it may cause a failure in verification. So all of these systems, these two systems, they are categorized as as high risk because they use biometric data and they have significant impacts on public service access. So these are just an example of public ADMs that we know of. There might be a lot more because I checked that in February 2026, at least the government has actually deployed at least 27,000 apps. Not all of them are AI, definitely, but the apps itself that is used in the public sector, there are 27,000 of them. So this brought us to the question: what happened to the system that have already been deployed? Why has an impact assessment to them not being done yet? And if it's already been done, why we are as the public who are interacting to this with the systems do not know and are not explained clearly how the systems use our data, how does it impact our access to our rights, and what remedy measures are available to us. So all of these questions, actually, also all of these impacts that we documented resonate what Dr. Song mentioned earlier about the domination creeping in. So of course, data exclusion, algorithmic stigmatization, algorithmic subordination, accessibility exclusion. We can theorize that it happened from the impacts that are already visible. But then, what kind of safeguards beyond the technical safeguards are needed to address this when this is the problem of power, right? When AI itself is a socio-technical system, it's not just a technical system. And as Dr. Song mentioned, it's not about implementing technical safeguards. We can have a list of safeguards of to be implemented, but does it actually solve the problem of power? Does it actually solve the problem? Does it actually address the question about public governance institutions? They have cultures. When the government design safeguards for AI, and the public sector officials are the operators of these safeguards, do they actually consider culture in the public sector itself? And I believe that Dr. Song, because he's his background is actually in a responsive regulation study, can actually shed some light in this discourse, which is very captured in technologization of the public sector itself. And from TIFA side, other than the measures that Dr. Song has already mentioned, contestability, explainability, accountability, as well as inclusive design, we are urging to have participation included in there. Of course, you can have an inclusive design, but if it's a design that is not developed through meaningful participation of the affected public, would that actually make it an inclusive design? So that's something that I would like to discuss as well. If participation can actually also be inserted as another measures for safeguarding implementation of AI in the public sector, because like you said, there's already power asymmetry in the use of AI itself, and there's already like some sort of inevitability for us citizens to use AI in the provision of public service. Another thing is actually, and maybe this is already covered in the points that Dr. Song made, but redress and remedy, it's something that right now needs to be prioritized by the government to be implemented, or if it's already being implemented again, the public needs to know. They need to know where to ask for help, where to ask for fallback mechanism if the AI system itself does not work. And then another thing I would also like to ask, if you can also shed some light from practices in South Korea, uh, how do you mainstream piloting or prototyping as something that the public sector needs to do before scaling up any kind of interventions? Because I think that's also something that we need to start doing here. So starting small, piloting before actually the impact gets too big, or the investment that is made on that system is already too big for us to actually move back from evaluating the implementation of the systems. I think I'll stop there. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ms. Deborah, Kadebora, for mentioning again about relate. It is not always about the implementing the safeguards, the technical safeguards, but also how the ecosystem allowing the safeguards to be implemented as well. And also, there are several questions that is also raised by Kadebora at the end of her presentation. It is regarding the participatory measure and also the mainstreaming or piloting the implementation of the AI system, which I think can be will I will leave it to Dr. Sung and also Mas Yudhistira. But before that, I'm going to invite participants here to ask questions or to present their experience on the AI governance. Um, yes, I will open it for 3 person first, Mas Adam, and then Ba Sinta and Ba Karina, please.
Thank you, Mbak Theo. Thank you, Dr. Song. My name is Adam from Datum Indonesia. We're the civil also looking at the utilization of data and technology.
Sorry about that. Ooh, very echoey. I have a few points. The first is
It seems like that you were pointing to a problem of incentives and regulation. Um, a lot of public officials are thinking that precautionary and preemptive regulation is excessive and prematurely punitive. What do you think would be the opposite incentive for that? How are they going to be convinced that we need proper regulation and legislation in this area? That's my first question. My second question is actually related to that, and I'm thinking about punitive action. Punitive action. So my question is, you said that we need accountability and contestability. I'm wondering whether existing corrective mechanisms in handling cases of failure is adequate or not. You pointed out that you might need an independent AI ombudsman. Why do we need an independent AI ombudsman? What's wrong with the current or existing ombudsman? And beyond that, what about the court system and whistleblower systems that might also help with identifying cases and failures? What about liability statutes like torts and things like that? Would they be adequate to handle these kinds of cases? Um, Next is, it seems that you were also pointing out the differences between public AI and private AI, and the fact that one of the cons with public AI is there's no exit. It applies generally, and there's no options, and a person cannot reject the application. But it seems to me that there could also be some kind of advantage to public AI in that it could have probably a clearer accountability pathway because the accountability system would deal with entities entirely in one jurisdiction, where the state and the citizen is all under one judicial system, one legal system, perhaps with clearer legal basis, procedures, outcomes, and enforcement mechanisms. What do you think about that? My final comment is, it seems to me that it would be easier for the state to do all of these things if they obtain and maintain full control of the development and deployment of AI systems that are implemented in its jurisdiction. And my question is, it seems like we're moving towards what people call sovereign AI. What do you think about that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Adam. Next, Mbak Karlina.
Yeah, hello. I'm Carlina. So I think from South Korea AI basic logic, they have classifications of high impact AI, which we discussed today. But like if you propose the human in the loop in every loop, what kind of human that interfering in the system? Because now every government body and ministries is filled with military occupationing the public spheres, even geo-blocking news. So what kind of incentives that we can, lure the government so they can comply with human rights perspectives of human in the loops instead of like having military to surveillance the system and give punishments for the people who do the protests, for example. Thank you.
Thank you. Mbak Karlina, could you please introduce your organization?
I'm from GIZ.
Thank you. Next, Mbak Sita.
Hello, my name is Sita Laksmi. I'm actually representing no one. I'm an independent consultant. So I think thank you very much, Dr. Song, and also other panelists for giving us such a nice discussions and point of views. I think I really would like to tap on the capacity and the people behind the system. You mentioned four principles: contestability, expandability, accountability, and inclusive design. Is also asking you this on the people behind the system, people who are tired entering data. Because we once when we had COVID, for example, we had a lot of people within the hospitals that have to enter many applications, many data in different applications. So you mentioned about sensing, understanding, and acting. So how do we get there? Because if I talk with people working in data, Satu Data Indonesia, One Data Indonesia, people are really complaining about that. The not interoperability of data, bad data, and how we have to put the data better, but people behind it. So they maybe lack of capacity. They don't intend to do harms, but they have a harm. As how do we make them accountable? Do we know it's also it is part of life. I mean, it's part of the journey. But how do we put that in the safeguard as well? So it's not talking about the big program, but the people behind it, which is I was a consultant for smart city, and I know in some places it's only 3 or 4 people has the technology or computer background. So it's very difficult. So yes, thank you. Very practical. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mbak Sita. I will go to the panelists for answers. First of all, going to Dr. Sang, there are many questions for you regarding the incentives of regulations and then adequate punitive measures and the full control of state or regarding the jurisdiction of the AI usage, and also uh, perhaps you may also share about the military surveillance as well, please.
Thank you so much for your questions, and I don't actually expect to be questioned a lot like this. As I told you, I'm here to hear your stories and hear your thoughts on what I just proposed. But okay, I'll tell you as far as I can, and probably from the easiest one. Um, Military AI is part of public sector AI, and it may be a little bit different from what I mean by public sector AI, because what I mean by public sector AI is particularly narrowed down to some sort of public services assisted by AI. So military AI is also public sector AI, but this is a little bit different from what I mean by this topic. But my personal thought about the military use of AI is still it should go through some sort of impact assessment. Otherwise, it gives the military, the government, entire uncheckable, unconstrained power of destroying human life in every affair, and it is happening somewhere in a part of the world. And this is my personal opinion. And the other one about high impact AI, human in the loop. This is the tricky question that I have had for the last couple of years, because I wrote this article 2 years ago about human intervention, and then the article was about the case study of robodebt, and what kind of interventions should be in place by humans. So we came up with the idea of a triple loop intervention, but the question was, who should be the humans in these loops? And they might be some sort of experts, especially in terms of data process. Normal people are not interested in data process, and they don't know much about how data is processed or not. And so there might be some experts, probably technical experts, and some sort of public policy experts as well. But what I can say is in the last group, uh, uh, in the system, when it is deployed, and then if there is any feedback loop, evaluating and assessing the probability of any public service, then there should be the humans in this loop include normal people who are affected by the system, right? So I don't have a clear answer for these, but I think this is very important question in especially designing an institution like the human in the loop embedded in public sector AI. And a lot of people are interested in the incentive, how to make a government make government introduce this sort of system, and how to implement, how to enforce if they are the system they are designing is against the public will or have a high risk. I think that's exactly why AI impact assessment should be in place. I'm not just talking about private sector AI. So I'm deliberately exclude private sector AI in this theme. Let's narrow down to public sector AI. And implementation issue is very important, but if there's a central process, if any public service AI, AI assisted public service should go through this AI impact assessment, and this assessment is not giving criteria for yes or no. It just assess the risk and what kind of impact would there be if this service is in place. And there should be an independent committee that this assessment is submitted to, and the committee will decide, right? This is allowed, this is not allowed, or they might put some additional conditions like, if you want to do this, and you should uh, put in place this condition 1, 2, and 3. And this proposal should be in review every 2 or 3 years, right? This is something that the government can do to other government bodies. So this is a kind of regulation, but what I'm saying is that this is a regulating government. So like an intergovernment regulation or government stewardship, whatever you call. So it is making the so in South Korea there is a debate whether which committee is in control of this sort of impact assessment, and it is not clearly mentioned in the law. All the regulatory reform is looked after by the regulatory reform committee. Now it's called the regulatory rationalization committee in South Korea, which is chaired by the president. And there's another AI committee, National AI Committee, is also chaired by the president. But the office, the administrative office is different. The first one is supported by the Prime Minister's office, which is exactly called Office of the Government Policy Coordination. The National AI Committee is administered by the Ministry of ICT and Technology, but they are quite different. So the law says that everything regarding AI and public sector AI should be administered by this committee. But what is interesting is that the Public Sector AI Act that I mentioned in my presentation is the act owned by the Ministry of Interior and Safety. So there are 3 different departments, ministries in South Korea. If there's any public AI and if there's a AI impact assessment is in place, who should control? Who should say no or yes to any public sector AI is not clear. And this public sector AI came into force only 2 months ago in June this year. So we're gonna see. And it should be I think it's overseen by independent agents like you can call this regulatory reform committee is not independent, but actually it is meant to be independent because half of the committee members are civil members, and the chair is used to be, now is chaired by the president. Before that, it was co-chaired by the prime minister and the civil member of the committee. And the National AI committee is the same. So this committee is part of the government, but still more than half of the members of the committee it should be from the civil industry, civil society industry. I don't think it should be a separate AI ombudsman, but there are a couple of ombudsmen in South Korea, but I don't think they are capable of looking after this, AI part at all. That means there should be another like a huge branch under this ombudsman, but that's probably depending on the context of individual states. So I'm not saying that this is the real answer, the right answer. I don't think there's the right answer. That depends. But what I can say is it should be independent oversight body. And so you mentioned responsible regulation. I appreciate that. And of course, there might be some sort of a threshold that this sort of public sector AI with any characteristics should be not permitted, right? It's like high impact or high risk AI or like a prohibited AI in the EU AI Act. I agree, but setting out which are not allowed and which are allowed is very specific, and that depends on the criteria that we put in the assessment, right? So I totally agree that there might be some line, but that depends, right? But it is very clear. I'm 100% agree with you that we need to draw a line that above this or below this, yeah, this is permitted, this is not permitted, because AI assessment should guide what the government can do and cannot do, right? But of course, even if I've been the director of regulatory policy at KIPA for several years, and I, all what I do always is to stand in front of the regulatory reform committee and okay, this is our review report for the VR regulatory impact assessment, and this is our independent post-implementation review. But still, the decision of the committee is very politically driven. But even though that's the case, but still, what we need to do is do our job, right? Right, and make this committee system less political. Right? Am I talking too much? Okay. If there's anything that I missed, just let me know. Roadmap. Yeah. Deborah mentioned how do we start, right? So, last year in October, I was invited by the Inter-American Development Bank. I went to Washington, D.C. And the reason they invited me was the bank was very interested in developing an AI system for better regulation in Latin America and Caribbean. And they wanted to build up an AI system guiding those countries in the region to review their regulations, compare regulatory provisions. So in this, if every regulatory provisions are in the system, that they can compare that, okay, in Ecuador this provision is like this, but Brazil or Argentina there's no provision like, right? So the Inter-American, the bank can say to the individual country that, okay, you missed this point, so why don't you do this? And then I'll give you like $100 million, like that, right? So the reason they invited me was that they knew that I was the project manager for the last 3 years, developed this AIS assisted regulatory information system in South Korea, and they know it. And what I told them was, you need to start small, even though there might be very different things and that you want to do with this. And this is sometimes the case with the bureaucrats. I'm sorry, you're the only bureaucrat here in this room, right? And what I always find challenging when talking with the with bureaucrats in different level, even though they are director or director general or the vice minister, they just tell me what they want. We want this, and I told them, you need, in order to get this, you should start from here. Then, I don't know, I'm not interested in this. If you're not reach there, you need to first start with this, and you need to invest in this system. In 2024, I was leading a project commissioned by the National Research Council of South Korea. It is about building up a roadmap for AI-assisted regulatory platform for South Korea, and we came up with 10 different services. And the first step was to build up database, regulations database, because actually it depends on countries. Because in South Korea, regulation should be part of the law, national act, presidential committee, departmental decree, and the provincial rules. And we looked into the legal database, and then found out that there are millions of regulatory provisions in the system. So we use the I forgot the technique. Anyway, we quote all the provisions, and then we came up with this vector database of all different regulatory provisions, and this took us 3 hours to collect together all the data in the national level. There are like 500,000 different legal provisions in the system, and then if there are some, the government has worked that some of the provisions are regulatory and others are not, but their designation was not actually correct. So we corrected all the differences, and we collected actually the data that like this. So I told them this costs like $500,000 for us to do that. So it's not big, it's small. But you need to have a kind of roadmap in your mind that, okay, this is the starting point, stepping stone, and based on this, there are some sort of technical, connections between services, right? But there are some services that should take precedence over others. So there are some technical priority, and there's also policy priority, and the people's willingness to accept, right? So consider all different factors. What you need to do is start small, and scale up from that. That's my advice. And sovereign AI. This is too big a debate. In South Korean context, sovereign AI started to be discussed early last year. And then the current president, who took power in May last year, uses the word sovereign AI to become an AI powerhouse in the world after United States and China. And sovereign AI meant, and so there's a lot of academics and researchers try to define what sovereign AI was, and I was not one of those. Anyway, what I heard from them was that the data should be treated in this soil. At that time, I was, use AWS. There's no domestic AI service provider at all. There's no domestic cloud service.
So we usually say that, oh, we have the data center in Indonesia, but when talking about the processing, the data also come across a region, traveling across region. When like because like cloud computing, they always synchronize to not only one data center, but also can be transferred to other data center. So this is one of the biggest challenges. So the sovereign AI is not talking about the model itself; it's talking about the data center. One thing. I think, and also about the before Bu Sita, talking about the military cases. I think when we talking about it, there's a perception between national security and the privacy. National security is more about how to protect the country, but privacy is related to the human citizen and also human factor, human rights. Um, but because when talking to public service AI, it's more about the for the citizen, not about the national security. Because from my experience, when talking about AI, against it's not. We always starting. I mean, we're starting small. We start small. What we had a big plan. So when I was in Jakarta Smart City, we always started very small, but we are continue year by year to have a big dreams. Let's say, for example, when I was in North Jakarta, we build the before the generative AI is emerging, we build the sort of like chatbot, so people can typing any question regarding the city, so with destination that I going to visit or something like that. So it's based on the citizen needs. So our approach is basically what actually understanding citizen need, solving the problem, and make a great impacts. So this is the journey that we have. Um, Back to Ibu Sita question about the sense, the journey of the sensing, understanding, acting. So those three stages need a human. The sensing. Sensing means how do we collect the data? How do we make sure the data is accurate? Because from my experience, 20 years working with the government, always the problem is about the data. Always the problem is about the data. So to improve the quality of the data, interoperability, and also about the governance and also the readiness of the people working behind the scene. So sensing means that how do we collect the data? We need not only the data, we need not only about the data collection, we also need that data engineer, people who make sure that data is already on the pipeline. Uh, how do we make sure the data that scatter can be also can be integrated into the master data. So this is very challenging, or I would say very time consuming as well. But we have to do that. Otherwise, we're not able to make it a better decision. So sensing, data engineer, data back end, front end, something like that. Um, we also and also about the understanding. We also train some young generation to be data scientists, data analysts, not only data analysts, data scientists. So how do we, because to be data scientists, they are not only have skill Python, they have to be have the context. For example, the transport, several data scientists for the public transport, for the education, for the flood or something. We have different data scientists for different purpose, because to be data scientists, they have to understand about the context. That's the most important thing. To have the skill, descriptive analytic, diagnostic analytic, predictive analytic, and also prescriptive analytic. So this is also about the people, because we I mean we had very power tool, but the problem is the tool is very complicated. The tool is expensive, but we no one I mean no one can use that tool. So therefore we train more people. But I think talking about the AI is very important about the investing the people, and also about the acting. acting is make decision intervention based on data. So I think leadership is matters to understand about the why this is important and how. So this is the loop, the sensing, understanding, acting, and also about the interesting. Back to the question about the what different between the public AI and also private AI. Back to the Deborah mentioned about DPIA, Data Protection Impact Assessment. I think under the Data Protection Act, all the automatic processing that process a large scale of the data need to be through the data protection impact assessment. They already done in the act, but unfortunately we don't have the the body who oversight the regulation, the acts, but soon later. And also the Minister of Communication and Digital Affairs uh, this year or next year, probably they will issue the decree on the artificial president decree on artificial intelligence. So, but I think most about the ethics, because when we're talking about the positive laws or any other things, I think we have to refer to the existing one, whether or not the Undang-Undang ITE or PPPSTE or also Undang-Undang PDP, something like that. So back to the what very strong difference between the public AI AI. Let's say, for example, Gemini, Cloud. When we not when we complain with one service, we just very easy to move to another's AI. So this have to prove that anyone here data has been collected, how many data has been labeled or something like that. Similar when we enter to the website or open the application, so they have like privacy notice and privacy choice, so they can see about the how about the legal basis, how the data has been collected, how data has been stored, or something like that. How data can be shared to other third parties. So similar thing. I think when we are implementing public service AI, I think the government need to provide the sort of similar privacy notice, like transparency notice to the citizen or to the audience. That's the thing. Yeah, I think that's enough. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Seng and Dr. Jyotistira. I'm I'm going to add something about the privacy. So recently, I opened a website. It's a game website, and I have to opt it out or turn off the targeted marketing for almost 50 something vendors that wants to do the targeted marketing. So turn off. And it is a really long list. But in the government websites, I do not think that we have such questions or such transparency. Moving on to the second round, I'm going to give this floor one question, and then we will have and then we will have another one question from online section. Anyone? Okay, Mas um, Ilham.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ilham Senong from Humanis, former colleague of Shita, actually, in Hibas at the time. So my question is actually related to, in regard to the public sector AI, who in the best practice around the world, who are actually the best builders or developers for this AI, whether it's developed in-house by the government or they actually acquire or uh, recruit vendors to do that, and how these kind of practices impacted the way the format, the design, and the as you mentioned the impact assessment of the AI tools. That's the first one. The second one, and I'm coming from the governance backgrounds. So within the, let's say, anti-corruptions, for example, we kind of have this kind of ecosystem or bare minimum institutions that need to be established before the effort can be effectively enforced. For example, we have the Anti-Corruption Commission, we have the Court for Anti-Corruptions, we have also other such things, and so on and so forth. And how about these AI? And can we just, for example, if we are just the users, government users of the AI in order to improve the public services, so we just opt these kind of institutions. But if we want to have the winners, so this kind of institution or ecosystem of institutions actually shaping our life, but also being shaped by the priorities itself. What about this is a bit personal for you, Mr. Looking at the current Indonesian way of developing AI, is that to develop the AI advancement in Indonesia, what do you think the best way inside shaping this advancement moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Ilham. And we also have one other question from participant online. It is also echoing the first question of Mas Ilham stated before. Increasingly, the use of AI in public sector is developed by private company in the global north. How do we ensure that digital transformation isn't creating technological dependency between us, the global majority or south, and the global north? And is there any example of AI use cases developed in-house by government? I'm going to give uh, the 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 opportunity first to Mbak Deborah and then to Mas Iwan, and lastly closed by Dr. Seng. Please.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Mbak Fio. I'll choose because I'm not an expert, so I think I'll choose question about AI accountability institutionalization. If I can rephrase the question. So what minimum requirements for AI related institutions are needed? Judging by how AI actually how to say, like, operates at different level, as Pa Yudhistira mentioned earlier, data, then we need to have an institution that will oversee the implementation of AI systems with regard to anything that is related to data governance. So in this case, especially when the AI systems involves the processing of uh, personal data, then we will really need the personal data protection no, authority, PDPA, PDPA, to be quickly be established. And maybe Pa Yudhistira can expand more about that right now, because since 2022, up until now, as most of us know, the Kombigi actually assumes the responsibility of overseeing personal data protection. But with the finalization of the Perpres and PP of PDP, we may be looking at another a new institution probably who will assume the responsibility of PDPA. Personal data protection oversight. The second one, as I see, is actually related to the environmental impact of AI systems itself, which is an issue that we haven't talked at least today. So not only about the data center that are need, the compute power that are needed for the AI systems, but also the extractive nature through which the hardware of AI systems are extracted from. So there are a lot of environmental impacts of AI systems, and in other regions, as much as I know, there are specific regulations that are catering to that environmental impacts of AI, especially, for example, the data center. So even though data center operators may be classified as another operators of what do you call them? Uh, PSA. What is PSA?
Penyelenggara sistem.
Electronic system provider. Because their hardware data center, but also in other regions, especially in the EU, for example, there's a specific directive that actually caters to the data center, regulating data center because of their environmental impact. So we will definitely need clarity on which institution in Indonesia actually will oversee the impact of environmental impacts related to AI, including data center. The third one, which an audience member has actually mentioned, which is specifically for AI systems operated in the public sector. We need a body that will oversee the public service maladministration. And currently, it is a function that is done by ombudsman, right? But whether our ombudsman will also be mandated to oversee the implementation of AI systems in the public sector, that is something that we need to that we need clarity of. So at least these three institutions that I see as needed to institutionalize AI accountability in Indonesia.
Mas Iwan.
Thank you, Mbak Vio. I will follow Mbak Debbie's step to pick the question. I will respond to Mas Ilham on the whether it should be developed in-house, and I think that's the question from the online as well. And I will use the example that actually being shown by Mbak Debbie on one of the ADM system because I'm involved in one of them. First, I think we need to be honest that Indonesia, in some sense, is a consumer country. We are not yet being able or eager actually to explore. That's, I think, we need to set up. Perhaps some exception like Mas Yudi's team, but most of them. And I use that as an example. When the system was built, it was initially designed before the pandemics, long before the LLM already popular. So it is pure old school AI algorithmic things. And we can explain how it learns, how it will backtrack, etc. But when the LLM coming in, I have to admit that there is a laziness. Let's just ask the ChatGPT or others, and it will return the answer. And they no longer can explain why. And it relates with Mbak Sita's concern on the human resource, I think. Because at that time, I just simply told them that actually for any LLM model, you can ask them to explain the reasoning. It will tell you how it come into that conclusion. And actually, I think it should be practice for any public sector AI that every inquiry to the large language model should be in the mode of explain your reasoning, because it should be auditable. For example, let's take one of the two examples. The ticket, traffic violation ticket. It should explains. For example, I captured this car. I think it is between 6 or 8. I'm not sure. It should be in the reasoning, and we can ask. Or in the early warning for the case, incoming cases for the Supreme Court. Same thing. This is Ilham A and this is Ilham F, but same street number. I'm confident, but again, we can see that actually AI has some doubt. It is important. and we can ask and move forward. I think in recent months, 3 or 4 months, people are keep asking me whenever I met them, why you need to install an open with model in your laptop? And I ask, why not? Because people sometimes thinking why we should have our own infrastructure when we can just borrow from our rent from the global provider. I think that's a paradigm that we need to shift first. That we are willing to explore, we are willing to suffer, or probably me and Mas Judis is a bit in similar generation, willing to stay endless night to understand how it works, rather than just asking and getting the answer. I think that old school paradigm need to be instilled in the our current engineers before we can talk about that one. I think that's my point. Thank you.
Dr. Seng?
Several months ago, the Korean president in a forum say that the reason that we have to develop our sovereign AI is like that we produce rice in South Korea, even though it's much better, but the higher productivity and much cheaper to buy rice from other countries to get independent. So even though it is cost much pricey, it's much pricey to probably for the government to invest in the Korean tech firm, feeding Korean startups to have a real competitiveness in the global market with those big companies in the West. But still, this is something that we need to do. Otherwise, we never know what would happen in the future. No, especially now, AI is like a tool for national security. Yeah, if you have a look at the United States and China, literally there's no regulation in China, and the government of US is not interested in regulating, AI like in the European Union because their competitiveness. They want to be number one, and they know that AI is going to be the next hegemony, the source of hegemony, right? And it is very important for them to actually, uh, just know the not catching, not be caught up by the other countries. So it is a means of national security and means of domination between countries, not just means of domination between a jurisdiction. So this is something that you bear in mind when developing a public sector AI as well. And interesting case about the international inter-academic IDB. And the IDB told me, this is actually behind the stories, it should be kept in confidence. IDB implied to me that, they might be interested in our system. And after my presentation, the Director General told me that, okay, this is exactly what we want. So it looks like they want to have a contract with us, but it was not. And I found that was very reasonable because there were Latin American, providers, maybe less developed, maybe less capable of developing this sort of system, but still they have a domestic capability. If there is something like that, then the government and the any multilateral bank interested in the development of certain region should take priority of investing their money or resources in those forms. I think that's very important. And there's another probably conflict of interest, and it might be the case in Indonesia, but it is very the case. It is very case in South Korea that except for certain cases, every when the government is trying to develop this sort of complicated technological software system platform, they outsource it. But I always tell the government officials that AI, you shouldn't outsource that. You should cultivate your internal capacity and capability, even though you don't, you just, very technical part, you can outsource the very technical development of certain system to private firms, but still, you need to get the major development line internally. That's what we did. And it actually needs a combination of policy experts and technology experts, and they have to have keep conversation every day. A friend of mine is a data governance director of one of the big uh, banks in Australia, and he told me that I'm not a technician. I don't have any background in engineering, computer science. He was a business person, and he was the head of the governance. He has head of the data governance, developing all the overseeing all the groups, the huge groups data development and data platform development, because they know what the bank needs. Technology expert might not know, maybe not every cases, but might not know. It is very likely that they might not know what the government needs and how the government is actually working. And because the AI system, it should resemble what the reality is, right? The reality of the government, how the government is working, right? And that, so development and operation are not separated. It used to be separate, and now it's called DevOps, development and operation at the same time. And actually, that's why it is called agile development system. So it is very important to have internal capacity, but also it is very important to cultivate the in domestic market, right? So there's a kind of a policy priority. Which one should I take priority? I already this this what I have been talking with the government officials in South Korea. I told them that okay, we as a policy think tank, we know what the government needs, and we are very capable of developing this sort of platform, and then we can do something for you. But the government procurement system works in a way that if they need something, then they need to get the information provider, private provider, not public institutions like that. I totally understand, but this is a contract base. So when the contract is over, the private outsourced private vendor is not responsible for anything, right? They can take away their right. And if there is any new development, any LLM is now introduced, and their cost is huge. Yeah. So you need to think about these two different, the tension between these two. Yeah. And you asked about best practice. And best practice, I think there are two different ways. Front, best practice in implementation of public sector AI, and best practice in the governance of public sector AI. I think in the first front, United States and China may be the best. I think China is the best because there's no limit and no constraint in using data. There is no privacy. I shouldn't say. Off the record, there's no Privacy Act, right? And US is a little bit different, even though there's no centralized AI Act, but every the use of AI is governed by sector specific laws. So it's quite different. But the approach of central government, the federal government of the United States is light touch. So light touch regulation. So I think these two countries are the best in terms of implementing public sector AI. And in the governance, I think EU is trying a lot. Canada has introduced this algorithmic impact assessment like 5 or 6 years ago. So in terms of guardrails, I'm not sure whether there are enough guardrails in these top two countries.
Thank you, Dr. Sung. It has been a really productive discussion we have this afternoon. Thank you so much for. Uh, sure.
Yes, I think before Ilham, so back to the military, I remember that one, I didn't mention the name because like, I remember that one of blood language model is part of the master balance. So therefore, it's better to use there is a one large language model that give you counterparts, but you suggesting not to use the normal email, so you're using your corporate email that already even the corporate email are using that platform. Even I didn't mention the name again, but there's a screen. This disclaimer means that all data is cannot be shared to others. So data is beyond the company. So this more appropriate large language model can be used. So we use for the education as well. One thing. So I think be careful when you're using like one another large language model. So all the things that therefore, like for, an employee from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it doesn't allow to put everything on that and that large language model. So because all the data can be gathered to other to the US. I can mention the US actually. One thing, and the second, Pak Ilham, I think back to my point when you asking about with the best country, developer or any other thing. So we see the three element: power computing, algorithm, and data. So power computing, we talk about the cloud computing. So Indonesia, we don't have we do have cloud provider, but we don't have scale up and support. So we have the big five, like big three: AWS, cloud, and so Amazon, Macro, Azure, one of the biggest three. They have the technology, so we learn a lot from them. So this one thing, but for the for the small scale, so we can build our own. We can invest for the GPU for server or something like that. But for the scale, the enterprise level or national level is very difficult because for the in term of the complexity, in term of the capacity, and also the second one, the algorithm. So we do some exercise when we build our own algorithm, when we build our model, and then we compare to another. We compare our model to the subscription model, like any LMM that we have to pay. And for the first instance, we see that our model is can be complete, but for along the way, those models can be growing fast. You know what? It's very growing fast, so it's very difficult to catch up those models. So therefore, some country they didn't build from the scratch. So they didn't build from the scratch. They try to adopt the existing model for for this case, unless as long as the data is reside in the country. So they don't care. No, they, I mean, like, because they believe that it's very difficult to build the own model that can be catch up with the biggest one. So therefore they try to adopt some model, and then as long as the data reside. But the last one about the data, you know how many million of dollar they already invest to labeling the data. So it's big money. So I think when even we have our own model, the problem is, do we have the data? Do we have the training data that already in line with your LMM? So that's the question. So I think if the government, if our country want to more invest, we can do it, but it need progress. From start small, we cannot have a big one at the for the short period. So we have to build we have to build from the small, and also we build the ecosystem itself, the ecosystem for the researcher. So we also build the data platform as well, because as I said that AI is nothing without the data. So we need to build a data ecosystem, because so the data we provide all the data, because and the data itself is need to be belong to us. So therefore, this is also challenging for the public service AI, because most of them, oh, I have the data, but I don't want to put the data to this kind of platform. So they want to keep the data. So building the data platform, so we can adopt it, or we can adapt it, the algorithm, and but the thing is about the power computing. That's the thing, Pak Ilham. Thank you.
Just to follow up, to light up the discussion. Actually, there's a good example. You can find it on the internet. It is a joint research between Gojek, ITB, and UI, whereby they train the conversation in the chatbot, and it is open. So that's, I think, one of an effort, albeit it is by private sector and the academia, to develop our capability. It will be good if the government, probably Mas Yudis will invite some university. Let's train based on our education data. We may start small by verticals instead of multi-purpose. Probably let's start with education. Perhaps Jentera and PSAK can start with law. Even law, probably we can pick. Perhaps let's start with the biggest and controversial one, the omnibus law. We can start with that one, and so on. So that's probably like the call to action to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Iwan, and thank you for all the panelists. This is the end of our discussion for this afternoon. Thank you for the panelists who are present in here and also share your knowledge uh, to us and everyone. Thank you for everyone in the room and also who participates uh, in online in Zoom. We really appreciate your attendance in here. You can revisit the discussion that we have today by visiting our YouTube channel, either in PSHK or Jentera Law School. And we still have three upcoming international lectures or public discussions here in Jentera and PSHK. If you are interested, we have uh, public discussions for criminalizations of civil cases, the implication of the new Indonesia Criminal Code for business sector on Wednesday, July 29th, online. And then we also have regulatory capture, public participation, and the future of rule of law, which will be held on Tuesday, July 30th, and it will be online. Lastly, we will have copyright law revision and the future of Indonesia's music industry on Friday, July 31st, which will be held hybrid here in Jentera and also online. Lastly, I would like to invite the Executive Director of PSAK, Mr. Rizky Argama, to present the souvenir for Dr. Seng Hun Hong and Mr. Hemiwan. Please come forward, Dr. Seng and also Mas Iwan. And also Mr. Gama to present the souvenir to Mr. Iwan. Probably a robot. Before. Yes, I would like to invite. Uh, I would like to invite Vice Dean of Community Service and Student Affairs of Jentera Law School, Ms. Aspinawati, to present the souvenir to Mr. Yudhistira. And to Miss Deborah, one more. Miss- Okay, thank you. We would like to invite all the speakers to come forward to take pictures together. And this will be the end of our discussion. Thank you so much for your participation and sorry for the inconvenience during the discussion. Thank you.